Housekeeper, I've invited some celebrity friends over, so entertain them. My snobbish mother-in-law, who fancies herself a celebrity, declared loudly. Her condescending tone looked down on me. Neither this high-rise condo we're living in, nor the coffee set she boasts about as her own, actually belong to her. My sweet-natured husband, who seems a bit naive, doesn't seem to realize her malice. Exhausted from being at her beck and call, I have no choice but to comply helplessly. Why is this person even here? What? The moment she saw me carrying the coffee and snacks, my mother-in-law's proud celebrity friends started trembling. Ignoring my confused mother-in-law, we were all stirred up. Amidst the commotion caused by my unexpected true identity, my husband casually started talking, and that greatly altered my mother-in-law's fate. And the person who delivered the final blow to her was someone unexpected. It was surprising that such an ending awaited us. Even if I could rewind time and relive this day, it would have been unpredictable for me. I am Molly, a 45-year-old housewife. I've been married to my husband Alex, who is the same age, for 19 years. We've just moved into what you might call a high-rise condo. Having finished unpacking, we're enjoying our new life. After our child left home for college, it was the perfect opportunity for Alex and me to move into a condo of just the right size. Indeed, it's a fine high-rise we splurged on the rent for, quiet with good sunlight and a comfortable environment. We also bought some small furniture better suited to our new place and some stylish dishes we had been longing for. It's delightful to see the space gradually reflect our taste. That pleasant life was disrupted by a single phone call. Hello, Molly? Congratulations on moving into the new place. I want to celebrate, so I'll come over now. My mother-in-law, who lives with my brother-in-law and his wife, had heard about our move and decided to visit us. I managed to respond pleasantly enough, but internally, I was screaming. I find my mother-in-law a bit difficult to deal with. Not so much because of our relationship as mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but because of her personality. She boasts as if everything is her accomplishment. I'm not particularly fond of that. She continually seeks to dominate and speaks condescendingly. Mom coming over to celebrate our move is kind of nice of her, isn't it? My husband, blissfully unaware, took her words at face value. I sighed. It's just for a short time, I can endure it and hope nothing happens. As I prayed that my unease was unfounded, I waited for my mother-in-law to arrive. Oh my! What a beautiful home! When she arrived, she was as excited as a child. This house uses a remote system to unlock the entrance door when guests ring from the intercom in their condo. I was surprised by how eagerly she approached the intercom camera, but her cheerful demeanor wasn't bad. Just when I thought maybe we could end this visit on good terms, she suddenly said, "Let's have dinner delivered or go out tonight. By the way, it's currently 10 a.m. Talking about dinner plans this early is a bit much." It seems she intends to stay at least until dinner. The thought of her possibly planning to stay overnight made my cheeks twitch. She didn't say she's staying overnight, did she? Well, if it comes to that, I guess she can sleep on the mattress we keep for when guests visit. My husband is adorably naive but sometimes painfully oblivious to malice. Even when he is the target of harassment, he doesn't realize it and keeps smiling. I'm more sensitive by nature, so his magnanimity often surprises and attracts me. But this time, it's just too much for me. Even if my mother-in-law acts all high and mighty again, I doubt my husband, Alex, will even bat an eye. After all, the person in question is his mother. To him, she's the mother he grew up with and became fond of until adulthood. Unless I complain about how much I dislike it, it seems better to assume that no help will come from him. My mother-in-law arrived pulling a suitcase. What she handed over as a celebration was snacks worth about $10. As soon as I made coffee and opened the box, my mother-in-law started munching on the sweets before we could. Amazing, really impressive. Alex is so respectable, to be able to buy a place like this. I'm so proud, she said, tilting her chin up and flaring her nostrils. A perfect boastful face. If this were an audition for a mean role like Cinderella's mother, she'd pass instantly. "We didn't buy it, it's rented thanks to Molly," my husband responded, tilting his head. That statement was spot on. Despite being a high-rise condo, this place is a rental. "Oh wow, Alex is so great. Come on, Molly, take out the trash, quickly." No sooner had she praised my husband than she turned a stern face towards me. She seemed to be telling me to throw away the wrappers of the sweets we had finished eating, which were on the table. I gathered and threw away the trash while feeling a bit annoyed. The trash can is in a noticeable place, she could do it herself. Or at least she could say, "Please throw this away," but being ordered around like this was unpleasant. Afterward, my mother-in-law kept giving me orders at every turn. "Bring this, clean that up," treating me almost like a servant. Initially, I endured it and served the meal as told, but my mother-in-law started to push her luck even more. "This is greasy, isn't it? Aren't you cleaning? I've been here since this morning and haven't seen you clean once. You're pretty much the maid of this house, aren't you? Get to work." Usually, I'd clean any time. It's one of the household chores I actually like. The only reason I hadn't done it yet was because she was here as a guest. Or maybe she really did think I was the maid. I was about to talk back but swallowed my words. She was supposed to leave soon anyway. It's more energy efficient to just let things slide than to create a fuss. The sneaky part about my mother-in-law is that she hardly says these things in front of Alex. When he's around, she praises him in a cutesy voice and spends her time having fun. She's utterly mean-spirited, and it's so annoying. However, things took a turn for the worse after dinner. My mother-in-law announced she was staying over. Alex's face turned serious for a moment, then he chuckled and whispered to me, "I'm sorry, Molly, I'll talk to her later. Can you endure it just for tonight?" I'm weak to this expression with his eyebrows furrowed. I resigned myself to it and quietly prepared the bedding. As I was laying out the mattress on the hardwood floor, my mother-in-law suddenly appeared nearby. "Directly on the floor? Don't you have a rug? The stores are still open, go buy one," she commanded in a snarky tone, completely different from when she's in front of Alex. Utterly unpleasant, yet I responded in as kind a voice as I could. "It's just for one day, please bear with it. Our place is all hardwood floors." I even added a smile, but it didn't seem to open her heart. My mother-in-law glared at me with contempt. Thinking about how much it bothered her to lay the mattress on the floor, she snorted and said, "Planning to kick me out in one day? I'll be staying for a few days. I want to meet the celeb neighbors too." I was taken aback. I kept my strange smile and rushed back to Alex. "Alex, your mom says she's staying for a few days. Can you ask her to go out while I'm working or at least keep quiet?" Alex looked a bit surprised as our eyes met. Actually, I write a blog as a hobby and do a bit of work from home. It's clear that my activities would be disrupted while my mother-in-law is here, and I really wanted to secure some time for myself. My husband, Alex, nodded strongly and spoke to my mother-in-law. "If you're staying, please don't disturb Molly's work. It's important work. Why don't you go shopping or take a walk during the day?" To this, my mother-in-law cheerily responded, "Yes, yes." Her overly cheerful demeanor actually seemed suspicious. I sincerely prayed she wouldn't do anything unnecessary. However, in the following days, my mother-in-law was completely inconsiderate. Take the laundry, for example. She would leave it out every night and get angry if it wasn't washed by the next morning. I felt sad wondering why I was washing her underwear while being mindful of noise for the neighbors. "Make sure to wash these in a laundry net. They are my delicates," she demanded harshly. Reluctantly, I put them in the net, realizing none of the clothes seemed delicate. Her promise not to disturb me during the day seemed forgotten. Instead of going out, she ordered me around to do her shopping. "You told me to buy juice, and you bring back this sugar water? Who buys anything but 100% fruit juice when their husband's parents are visiting?" With that, she swept the bottle off the table. The sound of the liquid splashing was frustrating after I had hurried to buy it. My mother-in-law continued to press. "Hurry back and get the right one, you're really slow. Didn't I tell you? A daughter-in-law is just like a maid. Don't you get it yet? I'll throw you out of this house." Silently, I turned on my computer. I thought I couldn't deal with her anymore. "I'm sorry, but I have urgent work to do. The supermarket is right outside. Could you please buy whatever you like yourself?" While spewing unbearable complaints, she eventually left the house. Finally alone, I started to calm down in the quiet. She would only be here for a few more days. I kept telling myself to endure it. When she returned, she was holding a bottle of wine, not juice. For a moment, I thought, well, alcohol is unavoidable. If you're going to enjoy some wine, please have some of this cheese as well. Alex bought it on a business trip, and it's really tasty. I offered her some rather expensive cheese, and visibly, her mood improved. My mother-in-law didn't seem to have any plans to leave even after a week. Furthermore, she started greeting the neighbors on her own. She lingered in front of the elevator, chatting up everyone she could. When Alex told me about her behavior, I was mortified. I told her to stop lying in wait, but she's excited about meeting the neighbors. Maybe it's time for a tough approach. Both Alex and I, enduring her stay, were reaching our limits. On the 9th day of her stay, my mother-in-law suddenly brought guests home. It seemed she had set her sights on Madison, particularly refined and wealthy residents. She acted as if they were friends, even linking arms. When I heard my mother-in-law call her by name, I realized it was Madison, but these were strangers to me. Since I was in my house clothes, I hurried to the kitchen to escape, letting Alex handle the guests. Mom's acting like she's friends with the celeb crowd, sucking up to Madison as if she rented this high-rise herself. I wish she'd stop. Alex came to the kitchen to report and shrugged his shoulders. Moreover, my mother-in-law had even declared she was throwing a party. I was thoroughly disheartened. Then I heard my mother-in-law's voice. "Housekeeper. I've invited some celebrity friends, so entertain them." I was just so tired. I didn't have the energy to resist and began preparing the coffee. Alex quietly brought me a change of clothes. At least changing into these would spare me the embarrassment of being seen in my house clothes. I placed the coffee set and some store-bought baked cakes on a tray and brought them out to the guests. "Why is this person here? What?" As soon as Madison saw me bringing the coffee and snacks, she started trembling. Behind her, the rest of Madison's family appeared excited, each gesturing animatedly. My mother-in-law was shocked to see her proud celebrity friends suddenly change their demeanor. "Wow, hey, the real Molly, right? I always read your blog. I'm a fan. I watch your streams too." Madison stood up and reached out to shake my hand. Blogging and streaming are hobbies of mine that also connect to my work. Madison's family were my readers. Since I showed my face online, they recognized me immediately. My mother-in-law doesn't watch blogs or videos, so she looked puzzled. "Well, thank you. I'm glad you read it," I said with a beaming smile. Actually, my blog is quite popular, especially among homemakers. Sometimes people recognize me and speak to me when I'm shopping, but I had no idea there were readers in the same high-rise. Amazing! The real deal! So classy! Leaving my bewildered mother-in-law behind, Madison was thrilled. I calmly tried to settle her down with a modest smile. Seeing how delighted she was, I poured the coffee carefully, wanting her to enjoy a proper cup. I also put out not just the baked cakes, but some dried fruits. Madison added some delicious canellas she had brought to the table. Thanks to the splendid array of sweets, the atmosphere quickly became lively. We were excited, leaving my mother-in-law, who was clueless about the internet, out of the loop. Alex noticed the change in the air and joined us with a smile. "I saw the notice that you couldn't stream this week because of overnight guests and was really sad. But, wow. Kathy is the guest? What? Why can't you stream then?" Adults can wait quietly during a stream, right? I thought you might have small children visiting. At her words, Madison's family chuckled. My mother-in-law, noticing the disdainful looks around her, turned bright red and looked down. Actually, I am also known as a charismatic home management blogger. I share tips on housekeeping and organization, and my content is popular across several generations. I started social media recently and have begun streaming directly with my readers due to their requests. However, my planned streams were disrupted because Kathy kept interfering. Kathy really knows little about the internet, and the chance of her finding my social media is almost zero. So, I wrote a slightly vague post. I had an overnight guest and couldn't stream as planned. I'm really sorry to those who waited. Because, well, the guest gets upset if I don't take care of them. Of course, I didn't show my mother-in-law's face, and I made it somewhat humorous to not paint her as a complete villain. But anyone seeing both the situation and my social media would understand how Madison and the others might feel. Next to speak was Alex. Wow, Madison also read Molly's blog, thank you. She's publishing a book soon, and my publishing company is handling it, so please look forward to it. My mother-in-law looked shocked at Alex. She hadn't heard anything about this. I hadn't told her because in the past, whenever I shared good news, she would get upset, accusing me of bragging. So I had chosen not to mention it this time. It's one thing to be seen by chance, but I thought there was no need to go out of my way to tell and be disliked on purpose. It's actually because I'm working on the book right now. I told Mom not to disturb Molly's work. It's not okay to interrupt the stream. If Molly's book gets delayed, I'll get in trouble since I'm in charge of it. My mother-in-law let out a small huh and shrank. She probably never imagined that I was working with my husband. Alex then innocently started bringing up Kathy's behaviors. Speaking of which, Mom, you said something funny yesterday. Why don't you include that in the book as a family episode? Remember when you said the tomato sauce Molly made yesterday was sour and must be spoiled? You're such a funny mom. Madison's family burst into laughter. I just looked down, feeling I shouldn't laugh. But Alex didn't stop. You were saying you're a celeb because you're staying in a high-rise condo, even though you're just visiting. Saying you indulge in luxurious while drinking liquor store wine, I'm tempted to point out that's quite plebeian. I thought about calling it a charming anecdote, but I stopped as Kathy's complexion went from red to almost black. Apparently, the episode was too trivial for Madison, who only offered ambiguous smiles, looking back and forth between Alex and Kathy. Let's change the subject. By the way, Madison, I see you're using that bag. Madison had used the bag, which was from a collaboration with a magazine I had supervised, to carry the Keneal box. When I changed the subject, Madison's expression brightened immediately. Yes, the bag designed by Molly is very user-friendly. I love it. The inner pocket is just the right size, and the base is sturdy with a wide gusset. Actually, I have 2 more at home. My mother-in-law didn't say a word. She clearly wasn't amused, but she probably didn't want to be disliked by the upscale family she had targeted. It really helped that she was unusually quiet. After that, we had a very pleasant home party. We had just moved here and didn't know much about the local area. Madison's family, having lived here longer, knew a lot about nice shops and places. They shared many useful tips with us. I have other friends who read Molly's blog too. Would you like to join us for lunch sometime? Madison extended a delightful invitation. It looked like we might have a good neighborhood relationship as friends going forward. My mother-in-law glared at me with an incredible expression and gritted her teeth. She must have been upset that her favorite celebrity friend seemed to prefer my company. Other people? If they're wealthy, I don't like them. They're greedy and vile. Those kinds are usually from bad families. She suddenly snapped, seemingly out of nowhere. It was embarrassing how she angrily spouted baseless accusations. The invitation was for me, not her, so her input was unnecessary. More importantly, it was rude to speak ill of guests I had happily invited. I suspect she was upset about being overshadowed, but it was largely her own fault. The reason she didn't know my circumstances is due to her own usual behavior. Telling her anything in advance just results in her sulking. And her ignorance about the internet stems from her stubborn refusal to learn despite repeated invitations from her husband and grandchildren. Furthermore, she's not really part of any elite circle, so she should give up on such pretenses. I'm sorry, please don't take it the wrong way. The contrast between my and my mother-in-law's behavior only highlighted her oddness more. Then my husband chimed in, speaking in his usual relaxed tone. I've never cared about family background, though. Oh, but you know Molly's family. Her ancestor was just in that big historical drama series on TV. That's right. Those times often feature in dramas. My mother-in-law froze, and Madison's family started buzzing. This was something I had only discussed with my husband and close friends, but my ancestor was well known enough to be recognized by anyone familiar with history. However, my family has become normal, and now we're just ordinary civilians. When my husband mentioned my ancestor's name, Madison's family all nodded as if they recognized it. My mother-in-law, who had never seriously studied history, did not catch the reference. She turned bright red and trembled. Not from embarrassment this time, but from apparent anger. About an hour later, Madison's family left. As they were leaving, Madison commiserated with me. It must be tough. But your husband is as kind and adorable as described in your blog, which was comforting. Please don't let your mother-in-law get you down. I simply replied, thank you, and smiled as I saw them out. As soon as the door closed, my mother-in-law's complaints exploded. I wish they wouldn't praise Molly so much. Living in a nice house is thanks to Alex's earnings. Those who earn more are indeed superior. Since she's supported, she should be humble. Alex, stop smiling and teach your rude wife some manners. Her face contorted with frustration, making her look years older. Her ranting was quite ugly. I was concerned her voice might carry beyond the door. Then my husband turned to her with an uncharacteristically serious look. I realized it was the first time she was revealing her true self in front of him. Surely, he would stand up for me now. It's not like that, Mom. We live here thanks to Molly. I told you before, didn't I? Didn't you listen? Molly pays the entire rent here. Sure, I cover the living expenses, but honestly, Molly earns quite a bit more than I do these days. I write a column for a magazine in addition to my blog and, fortunately, have a decent income. My collaborations and streams are also doing well. Though freelance work is unstable, lately I've been earning a bit more than my husband, which is true. The way he spoke and his expression were colder than usual. Internally, I cheered for my husband standing firmly by my side, and I added my own words. I'm sorry for not discussing this earlier. It's embarrassing for me to be earning like this. More importantly, I find it shameful to behave like that in front of the guests we invited. It's disappointing. There seems no need to force a smile anymore. My mother-in-law, in her agitation, looked around frantically. She looked up, then down, at me, and finally, glaring at my husband, she raised her voice. Are you saying you're being outdone by such a woman? How much do you even earn? What about your father's inheritance? If you include that, surely you would be. My husband interrupted her mid-sentence, revealing a fact I was unaware of, which startled me a bit. Dad's inheritance? What are you talking about? Mom received half of that, and there's hardly anything left of it. Maybe about $20? My husband chuckled, but my mother-in-law and I were agape. I didn't know the exact amount of my father-in-law's inheritance. I knew he had received it, but since it was his asset, I thought it wasn't my place to comment. So, even when I heard it was all spent, I didn't know how much it had been. I glanced at my mother-in-law's face in surprise, and it was shockingly pale. She must have thought it was a considerable amount. Remember when you came asking for help because you couldn't pay your bill? I paid it several times, right? It all went there. That was the money inherited from Dad. Because we can't use our crucial savings for such things. I exclaimed in shock, unable to articulate my astonishment. I couldn't imagine my mother-in-law spending so much on such frivolities. Unaware or not of my distress, my husband continued nonchalantly. Yeah, the inheritance is gone, so I can't pay next time. You'll have to manage on your own. At Alex's words, my mother-in-law gasped. Just from that, I could tell she was still involved in the same activities. My mother-in-law is in her late 60s, but saying, "You still look so young," might be too sarcastic. What should I do then? I have nothing left either. Molly, you have to say something. I silently shook my head. Disappointed, my mother-in-law left our house. After she left, I grabbed my husband and pleaded to keep her away for a while. I thought he might resist since she is his mother, but he understood immediately and called her. Mom, your behavior this time, calling Molly a maid and all, was too much. So, the main thing is, you're banned from our house. Did you see how the neighbors looked? Don't embarrass us to the level that we can't live in our new home. I stopped short of saying she should be completely banned, but thinking that she really wouldn't come anymore. I kept quiet, relieved that I wouldn't have to endure such hardship again. I was genuinely pleased that my husband had spoken up so clearly. Encouraged by him, I then called the most reliable ally I could think of. It was my sister-in-law Michelle, Alex's real sister. Michelle and I are great friends. When I heard that my mother-in-law was coming, I had immediately informed her. Michelle and her husband are currently living with my mother-in-law. After my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law, left alone, somewhat forced her way into living with them. Michelle's couple lives in a house with spare rooms since their children are independent. Thus, they had allowed my mother-in-law to stay with them. Michelle had told me, if Mom does something, let me know right away. Apparently, my mother-in-law had caused trouble at Michelle's place before too. She went around boasting as if the house she was living in, actually owned by her daughter and son-in-law, was hers, which infuriated Michelle. Could you not brag about our house as if it's yours? The neighbors said, nice to have parents build you a house. We're still paying the mortgage, think about us. She had shouted at her. Michelle doesn't really like her own mother because, from a young age, to boast about her parenting. She fabricated demanding stories about her daughter and son that never happened. These caused unnecessary embarrassment not just once or twice but over many years, fostering long-standing irritation. By the way, the house Michelle and her husband live in is under a 20-year mortgage plan, and they are still paying it off together. It's understandable to be upset if someone falsely claims your hard-earned achievements as their own. If you mess up again, I'll end our cohabitation. I've told you to live on your pension alone. Thank you for letting me know. If you come back today, I won't be able to sleep tonight. I'll make sure everything is packed. True to her word, my mother-in-law, who was kicked out, came crying back the next day. She was still pulling the suitcase she had taken with her, and was wearing the same clothes as when she left. Right after she returned home, Michelle and her family must have scolded her, and she had come back as she was. The image of my mother-in-law on the intercom screen looked so exhausted that I thought maybe we should let her stay for a day. I turned to my husband as if to say, should we let her in? But my dear naive husband just smiled and responded. No way, Mom, didn't I say you're banned? Kicked out by your sister? Oh come on, you're just saying that to get in, aren't you? Nope, you need to leave. Without listening to anything else my mother-in-law had to say, my husband abruptly ended the intercom call. I was stunned. This time I was grateful for his approach, but I couldn't help thinking how he had managed to live for 45 years being so oblivious to situations. I had been so busy raising children that I hadn't realized just how naive my husband was. Or perhaps, he had to be oblivious to survive in such a family environment. It's disappointing that he hadn't changed during the years we spent together, but now that our children have moved out, it's just the two of us again after 19 years. I'm determined to retrain my husband this time. 6 months since that incident, I am living happily every day. It seems Madison has spread the word and I am getting more greetings from neighbors. Some have seen my blog and broadcasts, which is a bit embarrassing, but it's nice to have more friends. The house has finally settled down. If I think of him as a big son, my charming husband is like a comfort zone. There are still times when I feel lonely without our children, but the time as a couple isn't bad. Later, my mother-in-law started living alone in a small house. If it weren't for her constant issues, she could have had a retirement surrounded by children and grandchildren, but now she leads a lonely life. With a modest living, she can no longer visit the nightclubs she loved. It seems unlikely that she will receive much help from Michelle this time, so the clubs probably won't entertain her anymore. Having plenty of time for hobbies and work is also a blessing. I had declined previous offers due to lack of time, but now a publisher has approached me about possibly writing a book. Being able to embark on new challenges is possible now that all the troublesome matters are settled. However, I recently had a suspicion. Perhaps my husband isn't naive, but a schemer pretending to be naive. When I asked Michelle about where my mother-in-law had gone, I learned about this. My husband had arranged her living situation. He doesn't provide financial help but does assist in finding her a place. Moreover, the condition was no contact except for hospitalization or family funerals. I was stunned to learn he had done all this behind the scenes. Michelle continued. You know, Alex is actually quite cunning. He may look innocent and clueless, but inside is different. Her analogy was so unique I almost missed it, but it sounded quite ominous. Apparently, when my mother-in-law incurred debts at a nightclub, my husband was furious and immediately consulted lawyers and the police. While he claimed it was to prevent debt collectors from harassing the family, his true intention seemed different. He actually wanted to shut down the nightclubs. He reported them for serving alcohol to minors among other things. He thought if it became well known that they had troublesome relatives, it would prevent my mother from running up tabs there. I had never seen or heard of my husband being so resolute. Could it be that he wasn't naive but pretending all along for 19 years? The thought that he might have been acting all this time was frightening. I don't think it's just an act. He said he likes how you take charge like a big sister. Maybe he's just being pampered? Unexpectedly, I was showered with information about my husband's affection. It's like dealing with a sleepy bear. It's not just for pampering, I realized. Well, if he does all this unconsciously, it must be love rather than mere acting. Whatever the case, from now on, we will live together without any worries. I'm looking forward to a future where I can live as myself.